Here we go, chapter 9. Chapter 9 is called On Her Way. Once past the rusty pump, Poppy had to cross Old Orchard. Let me pause for a second and show you the map again, just so you can kind of see where she's going. Sorry for the delay. Here you go. So here's that map. Their house, let's see, Gray House is right here. So it says that it's just to pass Old Orchard, which is right here. She's going to go through Dimwood Forest. And then New House is right up here. All right, so she's got a far distance to travel. Okay, sorry for that pause. Here we go. On her way. Once past the rusty water pump, Poppy had to cross Old Orchard. Mr. Oakak's permission was not required here. Even better, the grass was high among the old twisted apple trees, providing plenty of good camouflage. Here and there, delicate pink lady slipper flowers bloomed. Berry bushes were heavy with fruit. Bluebirds, jays, and warblers flitted around. Grasshoppers leaped about joyfully. Oh my, Poppy murmured as she rested halfway across. It's too nice a day to be worried and sad. She was sitting beneath the shade of a snowberry bush, nibbling on the succulent dandelion stem. Above, only a high-flying few clouds floated in a blue sky. The graceful drift of the clouds reminded Poppy of her secret desire, something that she had never told anyone, not even Ragweed. She suspected that he would have teased her. Once, when up in the Gray House attic, chewing through some old magazines, she'd come across some old pictures of an old balloon dancing team, old ballroom dancing team of Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire. Here the couple dipped, that's a dance move. Then they soared. Here they spun. Poppy was enraptured. From that moment on, her greatest desire was to be a ballroom dancer, to glide effortlessly across the floor in the arms of a handsome mouse. Forgetting everything for just a moment, Poppy plucked a pair of pink lady's slippers and fitted them onto her feet. How cool, how soft and delicate they were, as if someone were kissing her toes. Here's a picture. She jumped up, lifted her arms, flexed her paws elegantly. She hoped, leaned her head back, fluttered her eyes, and twirled about just as in the pictures. Round and round and round she spun. Suddenly, as if a voice were actually whispering into her ear, Poppy recalled something sweet Cicely had told her many times, that only a live mouse is an alert mouse. Feeling alarmed and embarrassed, Poppy promptly kicked off the lady's slippers, scampered beneath protection of some silkwood, and scanned the skies. Yes, she must keep on guard, even though Mr. Oakaks was probably sound asleep. Mr. Oakaks was not asleep. He was flying over the marsh in the direction of Bannock Hill. Though working daylight hours displeased him, he was convinced that it was necessary. Ever since Lungwort had requested permission to move some of the mouse family to the new house, Mr. Oakaks had been uneasy. He kept wondering about the mice. Had they discovered what he had discovered? Did they know something that he did not? He knew the reason they gave for moving to the new house, but were they telling the truth? Then there was Lungwort's daughter Poppy, who had escaped him twice. How had she done it? They all kept asking himself. Did she possess special skills? Why had Lungwort brought her to that meeting? Was it to mock him? Was it to intimidate him? Was she going to take over for the old fool? Here's a picture. And why did this business of Newhouse and the manner of Poppy occur at the same time? Was it a coincidence? Could there be a connection? Maybe it's a conspiracy. The more questions he asked of himself, the more nervous the owl became. Whatever the truth, Mr. Oakex decided that he had to remain alert, sleepless, patrol more. As his mother used to tell him, an alert owl is a well-fed owl. In particular, he must keep his eyes open for that mouse, the one named Poppy. Scampering from bush to bush, Poppy soon reached the banks of Glitter Creek. There she stopped to gaze nervously over to the far side and the towering trees of Dimwood Forest. Her first task, however, was to get over the water. At the spot where she stood, Glitter Creek was as wide as the length of Grey House. Usually the water flowed with tranquility, but not now. Though the bright water was moving far less rapidly than on the night of the storm, the flow still tumbled and twisted and foamed around the many rocks that stuck up from the creek bed. Poppy realized that she'd never ever be able to swim across. She could walk downstream and cross the bridge, but the bridge was sited exactly where Mr. Oakex had his watching tree, the last spot she desired to revisit. No, as Poppy saw it, the only way for her to get across the creek was by jumping from rock to rock to rock. She climbed a tree stump for a better view, to let her set out to figure a route to go. Though it took her a while, she found a path that required 14 jumps. The only problem would come on the 9th jump. On that rock, a turtle was sleeping. Even so, she thought she'd have room to make a quick landing and leap away. The turtle might not even notice her. Here's a picture. It's a long one. On the creek bank again, Poppy crouched down, ready to take her first jump. Just as she was about to spring, she stopped. Once over the water, how could she return home? Even as she hesitated, a breeze fluttered Ragweed's earring. The tickle it brought reminded Poppy of the reasons for her mission. Resolved anew, she gave a leap and landed deftly on the first of the rocks, and then the second, and then the third. On and on she jumped, gaining confidence as she progressed. The 8th jump, however, required a pause. Her next leap would land her on the turtle's rock. But because he had shifted position, there was now no longer room for her to land. "Hey, turtle!" Poppy shouted. "Would you please move?" The turtle slept on. In search of an alternate route, Poppy noted a small, low rock not far upstream. It was covered with moss. To reach it, it would require a difficult, though not impossible, jump. She saw no other choice. Poppy took a very deep breath and kicked. Her leap was high and far enough. She landed right on the small rock. But unfortunately, if you know anything about moss, its moss was wet and slimy. The moment she hit it, her feet shot out from under her. A quick skid plopped her into and under the water. Spitting and coughing, Poppy clawed her way back up to the surface. For an instant she floated downstream, and then a wave picked her up and pinned her against another rock. "Help! Help!" she cried. The next moment another wave whisked her away. Mr. Oakex, gliding over Farmer Lamont's field, heard Poppy's call for help. From the west, wasn't it? He banked sharply in his flight and headed in the direction of Glitter Creek. Paddling furiously, Poppy struggled to keep her nose above the water. Despite her efforts, she was swept on. She spun downstream like a whirligig. Then abruptly she felt herself wedged between two rocks. Water washed over her. As she gripped for air, she sensed that if she stayed put, it would be only a matter of time, a short time, before she drowned. Wrenching one paw free, she groped for something to cling to. What she found was the slimy root of a water lily. She tried to hold on. The root slipped from her grasp. She reached out again, and she managed to find the lily's stem. Snorting to keep her nose and mouth free of water, Poppy hauled in. Bit by bit, she began to rise. Something in the water of Glitter Creek caught Mr. Oacax's eyes, and to his surprise, he saw a mouse struggling with a water lily. Poppy worked frantically to pull herself higher. She was now only belly deep. With a few more pulls on that stem, she would be safe. Circling above, Mr. Oacax watched this mouse struggle to climb atop the rock. The moment it reached it, he was prepared to dive. Poppy nearly had her footing on the rock when the water stem snapped. Her balance lost, she tumbled back into the creek. The moment she struck the water, a wave pummeled her below the surface. Just as Mr. Oacax dived, the mouse he was watching suddenly dropped into the water. When it failed to reappear, he assumed that the creature had drowned. Here's a picture. How are you feeling right now? Are you nervous for Poppy? It's kind of exciting. All right, let's see. His patience frazzled. He pumped his wings. He rose on a gust of air, and he turned toward Newhouse. A day had passed since he'd been there, and he needed to check on it again. Poppy, desperate for air, bobbed to the surface like a cork. Once again, she was swept along. Her strength was ebbing. Ebbing. That's an interesting word. What's that mean? Has anyone heard ebb and flow? Ebb and flow? Ebbing. That means lessening. Her strength was ebbing. Desperately, she sought to hold on to something, but she found nothing. Down the creek she went. When the creek widened, the water grew less turbulent. Aware that this was probably the last chance she'd have to save herself, Poppy summoned her remaining strength and began swimming frantically. Slowly, painfully, she pulled free of the stem's main force. She bumped against a stone, then ricocheted into a back water that was calm. She stretched her toes down, and she touched the bottom. Half crawling, half swimming, she clawed her way up the creek bank. When she reached the grass, she flung herself down, coughing violently. For a long time, Poppy lay on her back, eyes closed, capable of only gasping breaths. Then she rolled over and threw up the last of the swallowed water. At last she gave a shuddering groan of relief. On the north edge of Dimwood Forest, Mr. Oacax found a branch that allowed him to observe Newhouse without being seen. From his perch, he looked past a dirt road, an old barn, a cornfield, a salt lick, and a lawn. What he saw was something else. Something he saw last on the new barn next to the house. When he saw it again, he gasped. It was still there. It must be living there. Whatever hopes that he had evaporated. Poppy opened her eyes. Though her vision was blurry, she was able to gaze up at the sky through the petals of a daisy. She was quite certain it was the most beautiful flower that she had ever seen. Anxious to know where she'd landed, she sat up and looked about. Only then did she realize she'd come ashore near the bridge and on the far side of the creek. Feeling pleased with herself, she considered the nearby trees and looked at them with pleasure. The next second, Poppy's pleasure vanished. She'd come ashore at the one spot in the whole world that she least wanted to be, right next to Mr. Oacax's charred oak tree. There's her flower. We're about halfway through our book. So what do you think so far? What do you think about the character development? We've got Poppy as the main character, and we've got Lungwort and Mr. Oakhax, of course, and Sweet Cicely as a character, but I'd say those three are, and Basil. So what do you think about the characters? How would you describe them? And can you describe them right now to, again, a sister or a brother or a mom or a dad, someone who's reading along with us and listening? I'll be back with chapter 10.